Welcome to Break Free to Brilliance podcast, empowering women in business through thought-provoking interviews and insights. Embrace your authentic power, explore the impact of your story, and discover how writing your best-selling book can amplify your message, authority, and the 3 I's: impact, influence, and income. Let each episode guide you towards brilliance in minutes. This is your host, Seema Giri. There are seasons in life where everything feels dark, not dramatic, just heavy. And in those seasons, the real question isn't how do I perform? It's who am I becoming while I walk through this? Some of my most defining chapters didn't look successful on the outside. They looked uncertain, they looked painful, and they looked like reinvention. But those were the seasons that shaped my identity. And identity, I believe, shapes everything. This is your friend Seema, and you are listening to Break Free to Brilliance podcast. If you're tuning in while you're navigating your own transition, maybe you're rebuilding, redefining, or rediscovering parts of yourself, I'm really glad you're here. Today's conversation is about what happens in the storm and what we reclaim because of it. When we move through the dark seasons without reflection, we often lose pieces of ourselves, our voice, our clarity, and even our confidence. And if we don't consciously reclaim them, we start building from a fragmented place. As you listen today, I want you to ask yourself quietly, what part of me did I lose in my last hard season? And have I fully reclaimed it? By the end of this conversation, you'll see how struggle can become structure and how identity, rebuilt intentionally, becomes authority. My guest today is Dr. Patrice Carter. Dr. Patrice Carter is a faith-driven entrepreneur, certified holistic health coach, and board-certified life coach who helps individuals and leaders heal, build, and monetize with integrity. A published author of Superb Women and Rainbows in Dark Places, she blends prophetic insight, practical strategy, and compassion to create lasting transformation. She's the founder of Breakpoint Coaching Collective, and she designs premier courses, certifications, and scalable digital systems for Christian coaches and entrepreneurs, a U.S. Army Reserve veteran and military spouse based in North Carolina. Dr. Carter is passionate about restoration, purpose, and helping others rise whole, confident, and equipped to lead well globally. So, Patrice, thank you so much for joining us. It's amazing to have you here today.
Seema is so excited. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to have this conversation started. I think it's going to be amazing.
Yes, I agree.
So, Patrice, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is because reinvention is not theoretical for either one of us. So, living in 3 countries and rebuilding identity in new environments and healing from an illness, I've learned that storms strip you down to your core. And what you rebuild from that place determines everything. So let's begin here. What was the storm behind Rainbows in Dark Places? What was happening in your life that led you to write that story?
Well, I have to say, I'm super excited about the story too. And I love how you introed it when you said, what do you become after the storm or in the storm? And I want to say, you don't look like whatever you've been through. So
Thank you. It worked.
Yes, it did. You did great. High fives, even though.
Yes.
So who was I? So thank you. That's a great question. So I am a suicide survivor. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence and someone who has finally broken free from depression. And so as I was coming to the end of those things, to really to the end of myself, specifically with the suicide and the depression, the gift that came back to me, I love how you talked about gathering these fragments, was this book, Rainbows in Dark Places. And so when I started writing it, I thought that I was going to write it from that standpoint of helping others sort of come out of that depression or come out of suicidal ideations and things of that nature, dark places. But it became a story that kind of just took on a life of its own.
Mm, wonderful. Yeah. It's I love it when people can go through that kind of an experience and then be able to talk about it
Yeah.
and even write as you have to be able to help others who are in similar situations. And I think that's being really vulnerable. I feel going through my own experience that once you have gone through something so significant, it's no longer your story to keep to yourself. You are meant to share this with others to help others. I think this is possibly what we are meant to do. So kudos to you and kudos, high five to you for overcoming all of these challenges and being able to talk about it. I know it's not easy.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I think there was a time where it may have been hard to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I've been on this journey so long of sharing and being vulnerable, and which I feel that there's an authenticity there. And even when you talked about um, not only transparency, but identity, we have to own all the parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And so being able to write this book and now give it back to others is as you shared, it's a requirement. I'm required to share that we may go through these dark places, but there is always another end. There's another side. And if we can come out looking like we look, because we look amazing, we have joy, we have brilliance, then it behooves us to come turn around and tell others that are possibly going through the same thing, how did I get here? And give
Yeah.
them a path to get there. And so this happened to be a creative work that allows that process and that journey to be articulated and that people can take.
So, what was that decision that made you feel like, okay, now you need to write this book to inspire others?
Yeah. So I went on this 5 year journey. It's probably more than that because I felt like depression was something I battled for a very long time. It was just like this
Mhm.
blanket over me. I just always felt so heavy, weepy, weighty, just weighed down. And just through the process of, implementing my faith therapy, because I believe strongly in therapy, and just sort of doing the inner healing in that work, there came a time where I felt it lift and I felt myself break free. And so there was one day in particular that I knew that I had the idea for this book, but I initially thought that it was going to be more of a self-help book because my first book had more of a faith-based self-help bent to it. So I was
Mhm.
assuming that it would be the same. Well, I remember that particular day it rained, and I don't know how it is there on the West Coast, but in the East Coast, the storm, the sky can be really dark at the same time it's also light. So you may have a
Mm.
storm that passes and the darkness is still there, but the sun is coming back out. And so you have this rain that's coming down in the midst of this dark and light sky. So I always know that that is the perfect recipe for a rainbow. I love rainbows. I love chasing rainbows, and I always run to my front door to look out to see, is there a rainbow? And that particular day, I looked down the street to the right off my porch, and there was the most incredible rainbow that was there in the sky in the dark part and going over into the light part of the sky as the sun was coming out. And I heard the title Rainbows in Dark Places. And I knew
Mm.
that I was supposed to, at that point, share my story.
Amazing. So that's another thing we have in common, Patrice. I also go out looking for rainbows. Actually, my dog and I did that the other day. It was not there, but yeah, you can just tell. And just like that, we all go through this. I
Mhm.
believe different communities try to put it under the cover and say, no, we don't go through these things. But every single person, if you're human, you are going to go through this. And at any time in life, you have gone through depression. Some of us, maybe because of not having the support or whatever reason, um, end up going a lot deeper. And if anyone is in that situation, I want you to know that at this point, it might feel like there's no other choices, there's no other option. But I promise you, if you look hard enough and you're willing to take the next step or looking for a branch of anyone that can support you, it is possible. It is possible. And it's just that there's something you need to learn in that moment. And as soon as you learn that, you start coming out of it. So what I do now, Patrice, when I get in these situations, it's like, okay, quickly, Seema, what are you supposed to learn? What are you supposed to learn?
Yes.
And activate my mind and my body to like start looking for that learning, so we don't have to stay there that long. Do you find that to be true for you too?
I love how parallel our stories are because, yes, I finally come to that place of maturity. And when I say maturity, where I don't go into victim mode or
Yeah.
victim mentality or feeling sorry for myself because I've been in so many different, I would say, like you, healing crises, dark moments, thinking that, oh my gosh, is this my life forever? Why is this happening to me? And so I absolutely 100% say yes, that now I think to myself, okay, what is the lesson? What is it that I need to get from this? And what I love even more is who is it for? Once I understand it, who is it for? Because I definitely never want to be a gatekeeper. If there's any possibility of joy and restoration, I want to be able to share this is how you do it. So yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And sometimes, since we're speaking about identity, one is choices and the choices of who you are becoming. I think sometimes we also get into these deep depression because we're not, one, able to make that choice that we need to make because it's just so hard.
Mhm.
Familiarity is really, really strong, and we want that as humans. Second, it requires you to leave the life, including the people. And that can be really hard because it's the uncertainty. You don't know what it's going to look like. Even though it's so bad, you know what to expect. You know what to expect the badness. You know people around you, if they're toxic, what to expect from them. But as soon as you leave that, you have no idea what it's going to look like. And what feels good also is kind of scary because can you actually even feel that? And do you even deserve that? Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, uh, that can make it really difficult. So it's because you have to make that tough choice, right? And if it's about leaving people, it may not be leaving them forever, but might be leaving them for that moment. So you can leave that identity because you've outgrown it. It's not because it's bad. You've outgrown that identity and you're stepping into who you're becoming. And sometimes if you don't take the cues of life,
Mhm.
it's going to slap you around, pick you up, and throw you down.
That is so true. That is so true. I love that. So, when you talked about letting things go, letting that, I heard the way I articulated what you shared is letting go of if there's the person that's in your life or people or situations that are creating that space of darkness, or is it you? And so for me, it was myself, it was my choices that I had made, poor relationships, poor decision making. And I think that is even more painful when it's something you did to yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I think about the suicide attempt and all that, I realized that I did die that day. I died that day to myself. I died that day to my old way of thinking. I died that day to those relationships and things that I needed to let go. And you're 100% correct again, in the sense of there were things I was afraid to let go of, although they were not healthy. There were situations, mindsets, relationships, because of the fear of the unknown. But my God, how could you not jump to break free from something that's killing you, that's dark, that's wearing you down and not helping you become your best self? So I had to really, like you said, face that, face
Yeah.
the darkness, face the unknown, the what if, and hope that there was a better future on the other side of that. And there was.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's just taking that next step, right?
Mhm.
It's taking that next right step that's a little bit different. And and you need to make that step because you deserve it. You do not deserve the negativity and the toxicness. You deserve a beautiful life. Everyone, we come into life to learn different lessons. But we all deserve, it's a birthright, Patrice, right? It's a birthright to have an amazing, wonderful life that you can possibly create and that you can allow to receive.
Mhm. Absolutely, 100%. There was something that you said, one that it's our right. And I believe that we have to operate daily from that truth within ourselves. I have a right to joy. I have a right to abundance. I have a right to respect, self respect, and boundary setting in relationships that are healthy, a right to healthy relationships. And I just think that is so powerful. And then something else that you shared made me think about how, if you said, if we're not paying attention, then this life could slap us around. And so I think that when I think back on writing this book, the characters that I wrote, that I framed, were the main character. She wasn't paying attention, and that was me. So she's sort of a reflection of me, even though this is a novel. This is a fiction work, but it's really rooted in the truth that we have to pay attention, and if we don't pay attention, life will come for us.
Exactly. So, number one, listeners, please pay attention to your life.
Pay
Yeah.
attention to your life, pay attention to your choices, pay attention to what brings you joy, pay attention to what makes you feel bound. I love the title of your podcast, Break Free to Brilliance. And break free implies that there's a place where we're not free.
Yes. Yes.
And some people aren't aware that they're not, or they're not aware that there's more and better and all that. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I like what you said is like, what brings you joy?
mhm.
Everything we do is supposed to bring us joy. And if you can start making decisions based on that, and it's going to feel really good in your body too, that's
Mhm.
the move, really. So, Patrice, from your perspective, what lessons about resilience and identity can readers take from Rainbows in Dark Places?
So the lessons that they can take is to, one, look to the lessons that your life is teaching you.
Mhm.
Two, the main character, whose name is Grace, was raised by her Aunt Mara, and something traumatic happens to Aunt Mara. And as a result, Grace ends up running out physically onto this path. She leaves her house and runs to this path to get away from whatever's happening in that environment. And because she's not paying attention, she ends up on the wrong path. And that is how Luther, the antagonist, is able to get her. And so
Mhm.
the second point is pay attention to where you're going, not being driven by your emotions. And then as she encounters him, she's not paying attention to all the red flags because, of course, I created him to be really good looking, really magnetic.
Mhm.
Like he's definitely like man bun. He's tall. He's over 6 feet. He's dark. I mean, he's all the things.
Man, I want to read this book.
So the third lesson is don't always go with what you see. What you see is not always what you get. So I think about
Yeah.
past relationships, how I thought someone was so good looking that I allowed that to be the decision maker, whether I was going to be in a relationship with them or not. But just because something looks good for you doesn't mean it's good. Good to you doesn't mean it's good for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the third lesson. And then the fourth lessons I took from that is she has this friend group. So I created different friend groups because the friends in our lives are the ones that sometimes we hear. Those are the voices that we hear that cause us to sometimes decide how we're going to move and navigate through our life. And so it's very important who you have around you. So some of the friends that I created, one, of course, has a strong faith, the other is more agnostic. And then
Mhm.
one doesn't believe in anything. She's just wild and she's living for the moment. And she's more of a friend to me than she is a friend. And then the other one has more of her own spiritual type beliefs. And so Grace is in what's what I'm looking for. She's influenced by each of these relationships. And so those things cause her to really not know who she truly is. And so I think it's important that we look at the friendships that we have and then determine, do they reflect who I'm becoming and who I really want to be? So those are some of the lessons.
Those are some really important lessons. So thank you for sharing that. I think those are the key things that we all need to be looking into within our own lives. We all have those kind of people, definitely. So Patrice, tell me, how does someone rebuild from a storm without building from fear?
Oh, that's so good. Can you say that again? Can you ask that
How
again?
does someone rebuild from a storm without building from fear?
I believe that the first thing you have to do, the first thing I had to do is face the darkness. So
Mhm.
as a life coach, one of the tools that I use is facing the darkness. And when you face the darkness, that means you look at the worst case scenario. You look at what is the thing that you are most afraid of. Because I believe that when you face that dark place or that fear, be it the unknown, be it the demons, whatever you think is hiding in the dark, because we're taught to fear the monster under the bed, right? But when you
Yes.
take the time to really look at that and pick it apart, and as we already said earlier, figure out what is it teaching me as opposed to it something that's happening, then you can begin to rebuild from a place of wisdom. So I think it's
Hmm.
very important that you face your fears, face the fear, write it down, talk it out, however, you need to process it so that it doesn't drive you. It's not in your ear. It's not behind you. It's not, lurking in the shadows. So I think it's very
Right.
important to look into the dark. That's one. Two, acknowledge what was. One of the things I had to do really was to acknowledge what parts I played in my own mental health, my own darkness, my own issues. And I had to walk through that with myself. I had to forgive myself once I was real about it. And then I had to set clear boundaries with
Mm.
myself and others as I began to move forward. The other thing I did was I never lost hope, but the way that the Lord in my faith uses me is He gives me visions. So I always had this vision that I never let go of, and it was that I could see myself walking through a storm and I could see a shower of rain, but on the other side I could see sunlight. I
Mm.
knew that that was an indicator for me that this storm was not going to last, that there was going to be a day where I came out on the other side, and there was. And so I say maintaining hope is how I began to rebuild that this was not going to be the rest of my life, that I was going to come out on the other side. And then also, I believe that when we give to others, that is how we can heal as well. So, what could I give to others by way of my struggle, by way of my experience in a way that would help them navigate their journey? And then, lastly, I would say there's so many lessons, but the last thing that comes up for me is kindness,
Mm.
kindness to myself and kindness to others, and forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others. So I had to forgive myself, which is, I think, a lot of people struggle to do, and then I had to forgive others so that I can move forward truly free.
Yes, wonderful. Um, what those are, I believe those are the key ways to rebuild. Face your storm, face the darkness, right? You remind me of that movie Monsters, how that little girl befriended
Uh-huh.
the monster,
Yeah.
and she was not afraid of him at all.
And
They
it was so
became
cute.
friends.
He's in love with her.
Exactly. Have hope.
Mhm.
This is not going to, no storm lasts forever,
Mhm.
right? And have faith in whatever faith you believe in, and also forgiveness, forgiving yourself and being kind to yourself. It starts with yourself first. So thank you for bringing that into perspective and highlighting this starts with yourself. So, if I wrap up this conversation, what really stands out is that storms don't remove your brilliance, right? It actually maybe brings it out even more. It'll make you realize what are the gifts you have and the strengths that you have that you didn't believe you had before. They reveal where it was sometimes when if you've never fully claimed it, right? I've learned that I never thought I was creative, but I've learned I am creative. I had to be creative in order to thrive and come out of what I have gone through. And rebuilding is a process, it's a journey. Healing is a journey. It's not once and done. You're you're going to be presented with things as you build your strength to handle those capabilities. So, but if it's done consciously, it creates the depth and success that alone could it never could, right? So these are the key things. I was just talking to someone yesterday, and it's like, all my life I've done this, and this is how I've turned out. And they mentioned all the negative stuff. I said, it's good that you're seeing what the truth is, but whenever there are negatives, there's also positives. So if
Absolutely.
you're going to do an assessment, you have to do it in a balanced way, right?
Absolutely.
So, Patrice, any last words for our listeners?
I would say be sure to write. everything down. As a fellow creative, like yourself, as someone, you help people actually birth their books and bring their books to life.
Yes,
So as a fellow author, I think it's very important that we write our stories. Even if we don't publish it, if we don't share it, it's important to write it down, to pen it, um, because it creates a path that we can look back to. So that when we're on the other side, we can look at how far we've come, but also it creates a pathway for others to follow. And so I think that would be the last thing, is to be sure to write it down and think about why you're writing it down. Are you writing it to share it? What can you do to bring hope to someone else?
definitely. Yes. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. So, listeners, here's a question I want you to sit with. Are you trying to erase your storm, or are you willing to let it refine your identity? All of us that have walked through it, we have rebuilt intentionally, and that's what you want to do. Because your brilliance doesn't disappear in dark seasons, it deepens. You want to pay attention to what your storms have shaped in you. Patrice, thank you so much for joining us.
So much.
So, listeners, stay aligned, stay aware, and keep stepping into your brilliance. Until next time, this is Seema. And I want to take a moment to mention that the content shared in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. My guests and I share personal experiences and real life examples that have helped us live our best lives, much like friends sharing stories. While we strive to provide valuable information, it's important to consult with professionals for advice tailored to your individual circumstances. Thank you for being part of our community, and thank you for spending this time with me. Remember, your story is your strength. Until next time, stay inspired and keep making a difference. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Break Free to Brilliance podcast, and I hope you had some key takeaways that you can implement right away. Be sure to subscribe to Break Free to Brilliance wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow along with us on social media using the links in the show notes below. We'll see you again for the next episode.